Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Amanda Kabage, who is the Research Program Manager and Regulatory Specialist at the University of Minnesota Microbiota Therapeutics Program. In addition to navigating large clinical research projects through the regulatory process, Amanda works individually with patients who are unable to join a clinical trial and registering for single patient studies. Thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us today to share more about the families you've worked with and their experience in autism clinical trials.
Thank you, Christy. As Christy mentioned, I oversee large clinical trials, but some of the most meaningful work I've been able to do in the field of microbiota therapeutics has been single patient applications. The FDA allows families to request access to investigational drugs for an individual family or an individual patient. You typically have to prove that it's either a life-threatening condition or that it's an illness that doesn't really have many options, or that all treatment options have been exhausted. They call it kind of a compassionate care application. This is for a single patient. These applications are not really considered standard clinical care, nor are they considered research. To date, I have helped treat 10 different individuals with autism across the United States. Two other families are in the regulatory process getting FDA approval as we speak. And I have another 4 families that I'm working with for future access. So I wanted to just kind of share a little bit about these stories because, again, this is some of the most meaningful work I've done. I become very close with the families that I work with, and they like to share a lot of the stories, the benefits that their children are seeing, and it's quite powerful. I've worked with families or patients from ages 5 to 30 years old. We have followed all the treatment protocols that we've received from Dr. Adams and his research that he's done. So all the hard work for figuring out these dosing protocols has already been done by Dr. Adams' team. All I have to do is kind of walk them through the FDA and regulatory process to get access to these products. And then at the University of Minnesota, we then provide them with our therapeutic capsules for treatment. So a few little stories to share directly from some of the families I've worked with. These are some more recent ones. One is about a 14-year-old girl, and her father sent me some of these updates. Within the first month of treatment, he sent me this email. It said she was much more engaged. She didn't have that distracted, self-absorbed kind of fog that she typically has. She actually looked at me, like really looked at me, and initiated a conversation. And I'm not sure if that's ever happened before. I'm trying to be objective here, but it seems like something is different. And then after treatment was completed, I asked for some updates, and he sent the following response. She's a totally different kid. Her improvement is off the charts. She's off almost all of her prescription medications, except for 2 more, but we've reduced the dosage drastically on even those 2 medications. She's significantly more flexible, pleasant, balanced, and present. I would love to see what her microbiome looks like once you get that data. This is just a miracle, and our family couldn't be more grateful. Another family with a 13-year-old son sent me these updates. They saw a huge improvement in the GI symptoms. Their son has not been constipated anymore, having regular, very healthy, painless bowel movements. He's also more focused in school and doing more work, and we've gotten several comments on his schoolwork. He has an educational consultant that he's been working with in our home for the last 6 months. Sometimes he would be too distracted, too excited to do anything, and usually has to take a lot of breaks and needs a lot of prompts. Yesterday, he spent an hour with her, and when she finished, she said, he just went through a complete hour and got every single question right. Whatever medication you're giving him, it's working. He's also been more focused in school in general, and we've been getting good feedback from his teachers. We've been really trying not to read too much into things, but it was really something, so we just wanted to pass that on. And then later on, when they were nearing their completion of their treatment, they were about 10 days left of their treatment protocol, and they wanted to share another story with me. He said his son had never initiated a conversation before, mostly only talks in one word or very short phrase kind of sentences. But today, when he picked his son up from school, an assistant said, Man, he did something so new today. I've never seen this do before. The father said, my mind went to all possible places and what kind of trouble he had potentially gotten into. But the assistant said, in fourth period, he looked at me and said, I want to go home early. I know that's funny. I know it's just anecdotal, but he's doing all these new things. And it really excites us to see him just saying and doing new things. And then his last update after treatment, he actually had shared a lot of the feedback with Dr. Adams. And Dr. Adams asked him about the general happiness of his child. And the father said, it's never really occurred to me to even think about happiness as a metric. But he said, my son is definitely happier than before. And then some updates from a 11-year-old girl who's nearing the completion of her treatment now. Her parents have given me some updates. She had the best week of school that she's had since our family has moved to this new city. And I highly doubt it's a coincidence. She didn't act out a single time, and she rarely goes 2 days without that happening. I haven't had to give her any of her gas medication or any other medication to help with her constipation. There are also small things. When I tell her she can't do something, she gets over it much more quickly than she used to. Yesterday, she wanted to go to Pizza Hut, but it was only 10 o'clock and they don't open until 11. She got upset, but she didn't throw a tantrum like I'm used to. We have this spot in our couch that lifts up for storage. She loves to be in there with her iPad and her blanket. A few days ago, she had grabbed the blanket and said, I really like this blanket. She's never really voiced an opinion or a thought in a complete sentence like that before. I woke her up for school a few days ago, and she had her school clothes in my hand, handed her school clothes to me and said, let's go to Target, as if trying to get out of school. And all I said was her name and kind of a look and tone that said, come on, you have to go to school. And she said, Dad, let it go. And she actually did let it go. And she got ready for school with no issue. It's the small things like this, coupled with not having all these stomach issues, that have us really excited. And then the family and then he sent me another email just a couple weeks ago with another little update, as his families love to send me all these little anecdotal stories that they hear. He and his daughter were in the pool the other day, and father was spraying her with a water gun, and she came over and grabbed it out of his hand and kind of snarkily said, oops, sorry, Dad. And he just said, I knew she was a member of this family and that she had to have some sarcasm in her. And it's really exciting to see that come out. And so I share these stories all the time with people because I get the exact same kind of feedback from these families when I work with them. They don't want to get their hopes up too high. Like, they communicate to me that they've tried so many different things for their children, and they might see some results that last for a little while, and then they revert back. And so it's really hard for these families to hold on to that hope, thinking that these are changes that are actually going to stay. And so when they send these things, like, they seem small, Amanda, they don't seem like they're very big, but these families know their children. And so they know when they're making complete sentences, they're voicing their opinions, they're able to get dressed on their own for the first time. These are monumental changes that are happening in these kids, and not just in these kids, but with their entire families. And you think about how much time and attention children with autism need from their parents, and the fact that all their siblings are also impacted by this. So when we're seeing these improvements, whether it's just GI or behavioral or both, they're having a massive impact on the child and the entire family. So it's just, again, been really meaningful work. I am wearing this jacket today purposely because it's the art is created by one of the patients that I have treated. He's an artist, and the family takes his art and puts it on different clothing to really promote bring awareness to kind of autism and their family story as well. So I've just been incredibly grateful to do this work. I could not do this without all of the work that Dr. Adams and this team at Arizona State University has done.
Thank you so much, Amanda and Dr. Adams and Dr. Kamolnik-Brown, and just for sharing the experiences of families that are involved in these trials and experiencing this on a day-to-day basis. We now will open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to submit it through the Q&A bar on Zoom. We do have one to get started here. How challenging is the process for patients to enroll in an autism clinical trial?
For a full clinical trial is a different experience than single patient applications. Clinical trial, there has to be, space for that. They have to meet lots of requirements. And so it's much more difficult to get into a clinical trial. Single patient applications with the FDA, when I first started working them, were a little complex to navigate. You have to learn a lot of the regulatory process with the FDA. Now that I've done over a dozen of these just for autism, I've done them for other indications as well, but for autism, I've done over a dozen. And they become quite efficient after a certain time point. What's been really, again, wonderful to see is actually the feedback I get from the FDA. I've gotten personal phone calls from FDA reviewers who wish these families good luck. This is not something I hear when I'm working with the FDA on large clinical trials, but these very personal cases really do mean a lot to these reviewers. They read the medical history, the background of these patients, of these children and young adults, and the FDA really does support these. You're not guaranteed to get approval from the FDA if you file for one of these applications, but so far I am batting 100%.
Fantastic. And then next question is, what advice would you give to families that are interested in participating in an FMT clinical trial treatment?
So again, if there are open clinical trials, the best place to look for a larger clinical trial, and potentially in your area or elsewhere in the country or even across the world, the website clinicaltrials.gov. It's a place where people are required to register their clinical trials. And so you can always search to find if there's a clinical trial that fits your needs. If there's not an open one, like a lot of the families who have come to me, the single patient compassionate care IND application with the FDA is an option. Again, it's a bit labor intensive. It has some costs associated with it, whereas being part of the clinical research trial usually has no costs, but that is an option. I am one person who knows how to do these single patient applications. I'm sure there are plenty of other people who also know how to submit these. Anyone can actually learn how to do it in themselves. They're not too difficult once you've had to learn a little bit of the regulatory process.
Well, we really appreciate your expertise and know that you've been lending all your knowledge to research groups around the country. And so we're grateful both for what you're doing for individual families as well as our larger trials and helping us move through the regulatory process. We do have another question that came through on dosage. And so I'm not sure who would like to answer this question. The question is the dosage in the trial based on the dosage results of the adult trial that was recently done? And will the new dosage trial be open to children and adults or just a certain age population? And so I think this question might be referring to the trial that Dr. Adams was sharing about.
Yeah, so our new dosing study is going to be for children ages 4 to 18 years. And we've learned a lot from our dosing studies for both our adult study and our child study. And now we're going to see if this new dosing regimen works better, and we hope it will.
Thank you so much. Well, that concludes our Q&A portion for this segment. Thank you so much, Amanda and Dr. Adams, for your time and for your expertise.